Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Cassie Viela and I'm a realtor, property manager, and investor here in the San Antonio area. And today I want to talk to either first-time homebuyers or homebuyers who haven't maybe bought in a while about all of the different times in the process that you will need to pay fees or earnest money or charges. I want to prepare you guys so that you can get your finances ready and have everything planned out, know what's coming, know what to expect. Because there are several points along the buying process where you're going to need to pay for different kinds of things. So it's not just closing day, that you've got to bring a ton of money to closing day. I mean, that's still true, but there are also other expenses that you're going to incur as a buyer along the way. And some of the things are dictated by the contract and have very important deadlines, so that if you miss those deadlines, you could either lose the house or lose some money. And of course, nobody wants that, or get into a whole legal thing. So we need to know what we need to pay, when we need to pay it, so we can get our money into place and be ready to do that. So the first time you're really going to need to pay anything is when you're under contract. So, as a buyer, you don't pay your realtor anything. So the seller is going to pay the buyer's agent. So you don't need to pay anything to get the search started. Sometimes lenders will have a small fee that they might charge you to run your credit to get you pre-approved. Many times that they don't do that. So you probably won't have anything to pay until you're actually under contract. And so that moment when you find out you're under contract, you're so excited, especially in this market where it's so difficult to get a house under contract. You're just over the moon, you're ready to go. There is a lot that needs to happen that moment. As soon as you find out you're under contract, you have 3 things you really need to get the ball rolling on. So the first is earnest money. Earnest money is percentage. Usually it's about 1% of the sales price, but it's an amount of money that you pay to escrow. So you're paying that to the seller to show that you are serious. It's something that the seller can hold so that you can't just walk away at the last minute or something like that. So it's you're showing I'm earnestly buying this home, right? So that's usually 1%. So if you're buying a $300,000 home, then that earnest money is usually going to be about $3,000. That does depend on the contract though. And sometimes, especially in a market like this, buyers are paying a higher earnest money amount. And so you're going to want to check on page 2 of your contract. Option fee. So the option fee is usually a pretty small amount of money, $100 to $300. It again can be more in a intense market like we have. But the option fee is the amount of money that you're paying to the seller so that you can have the option of walking away from the purchase for a certain number of days. So usually it's anywhere from 5 to 10 days is the option period. And then the inspection is when you get the home inspector out to take a look at the house. And so that's going to be anywhere from $250 to $500, depending on the inspection company. And then also you might get different kinds of inspections. And so that might cost more as well. So the details of those, the earnest money and option fee, just a couple of months ago, they finally, the Texas Real Estate Commission finally changed the law changed the regulations on how the option fees are handled, which is excellent. They should have done it a long time ago. It's so much easier now, trust me. But now you just pay both of those to the title company. Most title companies will accept both of them together if you are wiring in the money. So you might be sending a wire for your earnest money amount plus your option fee amount. So if you're buying that $300,000 home and you've got the $3,000 earnest money and then you've got a $100 option fee on top of that, you are going to wire the title company $3,100, $3,100. Some title companies will let you drop off a check. They might want you to separate if you're going to do a check. They might want you to write one check for earnest money to the title company and one check for the option fee to the seller, but check with the title company because everybody's a little bit different. But you have the option of using a check to pay, personal check, cashier's check, money order, as well as a wire transfer. Now, the big important thing on this is that you only have 3 calendar days to get this done. You have to get this done as soon as possible because the contract states you have 3 days to get that earnest money and option fee to the title company to hold that contract. If you don't get those to the title company within 3 days, it could jeopardize the contract. You could fall out of contract, and it could just be a huge mess. So make sure that is so important that you get that done as soon as you possibly can. And then one thing to note, because a lot of people are wiring in the money these days, especially if you're out of state, another reason to get it done the first possible day is because I've had some glitches before where maybe I have a client on the West Coast who is trying to get an earnest money wire in before closing time. And so they, call at 4 because Texas closes at 5, but their bank is on the East Coast, which is already closed. It just gets to be a mess. So don't wait till the last minute. Please just get that done. Okay, inspection cost. So of course, definitely have your home inspected. It would be really stupid not to. And I know that that's going to cost you a little bit. It's going to cost you a few $100s. Money well spent, trust me. You want to find out if there's something wrong with the home. You want somebody who knows what they're doing to tell you that. So get an inspection. Inspections are usually $300 to $400, depending on the size of the home and depending on what all the inspector does. And then a termite inspection might be an additional something around $100. And everybody's different on whether or not they automatically get a termite inspection or maybe wait to see if the inspector thinks they should. But you do what makes you feel comfortable there. It's not a huge expense to get a peace of mind. Okay, so we've passed through the option period. You're saying, yes, still gonna buy this home. The inspector gave us a clean bill of health. We're ready to go. Let's keep marching forward to closing. So the next thing you're going to have to pay usually is the appraisal fee. Unless you're paying cash, then you don't have to worry about the appraisal. But if you are using a mortgage to pay for the property, most lenders are going to require an appraisal. The appraisal fee is usually anywhere from $450 to $600. You may have to pay a little bit more for a rush fee, which might bump that up on the higher end of that range. But that's kind of what to expect. Most lenders will have you pay that by credit card, online, or over the phone. Sometimes it can be put in with closing costs, but in my experience, my lenders have always had us pay during the closing process online with a credit card. The survey is usually around $350 to $500. Now, look closely at your contract because the contract dictates whether the seller or the buyer has to pay for the survey. And this is another thing that might be pushed back to closing costs, or they might want you to pay upfront. I would be ready to pay that upfront just in case. HOA docs, I did not even put a price range because these people are all over the place with these HOA docs. It is the biggest racket you've ever heard in your life because they're literally like sending you a PDF. And sometimes they'll charge up to $500 to do that. And it blows my mind. So I cannot promise you anything in that. You're going to have to check with the HOA. 500 was extreme. That was the latest one that I saw, and it kind of blew me away. It's usually closer to 150, 200. But prices are going up everywhere. So, and again, that's one that is dictated by the contract. You'll find that in the amendment, in the property mandatory to an HOA amendment. So that's going to tell you whether the seller or the buyer is supposed to order the HOA docs. And the details on that, I kind of talked about this already, but the lender is going to let you know how to pay for that appraisal. The survey, again, you might be able to pay for it at closing. Sometimes the title companies have a relationship with survey companies and they'll just arrange it for you and you can just pay it at closing. And then HOA docs, again, every HOA is different. So some of them have really good websites where you just go on, you click a button, you pay your thing, and you get them in the email a few minutes later. Some HOAs, you have to call a person and get that person to send you the HOA docs in the mail. It's just kind of all over the place. So that's the one that's pretty unpredictable, but just kind of be ready to be inconvenienced a little bit and to pay a little bit. And then your closing costs. So, this is where the bulk of the money you're going to have to bring is going to come in for most transactions, is your closing cost. After you go under contract and you kind of get through the option period and okay, I'm definitely buying this home, you can ask your lender to give you an estimate of the closing costs for that particular home, because the closing costs are pretty property specific. And so it's hard for lenders to give you a good idea of closing costs before you choose a property. But once you have one, they can look up the information and kind of see what to expect. The closing costs are going to include property taxes, which those can just vary a lot because it's going to depend on whether or not the sellers have paid the property taxes for the current year or not. If they have not paid the property taxes, then they might owe you money for those. And if they've already paid them, and you might owe them money. So it really comes down to what day of the year it is and who's paid the property taxes when. So that's why it's really property specific. Your home insurance escrows, different home insurance companies are going to want different levels of that. That's basically you're paying usually 3, but sometimes 6 months worth of, or sometimes even 9 months of homeowners insurance up front to start your policy and to start your escrows. And then HOA fees, title company fees, all of those miscellaneous, recording fees and document fees and attorney fees and title company stuff. Like it's one of those death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. There's not one that's particularly really expensive other than title insurance. The rest of them are just, $20 here, $8 here, yada, yada. The lender fees are going to vary quite a lot. So that's one that the lender should be able to give you even up front. They should know how much their loan origination charges are going to be, whether they're going to charge you points or a fee. They should be able to tell you and help you predict what you're going to need for that. And then there's always miscellaneous charges. Again, like I said, death by 1,000 cuts. The title company is going to send you a settlement statement. And for some reason, this is called like 80 different things. Every company does it slightly differently and calls it something slightly different. Sometimes you'll see it called an ATLA or a HUD statement or closing statement or closing disclosure. It's kind of all over the place. But all of those things are your settlement statement. And it's going to be a table where you're going to have a column for the seller, a column for the buyer, and then the charges and who's paying each one. So it's usually 2 pages of a spreadsheet that's dictating who's paying what where. You're going to want to look over this very carefully beforehand to make sure there aren't any mistakes. Title companies make a lot of mistakes on these. I have found quite a few mistakes on these. They're doing a lot, and so and there's a lot that's dictated by the contract, or maybe was talked about outside of the contract that might affect it. So you just want to make sure you go through that really carefully, make sure all of the charges are in the appropriate columns. That's something that your agent should really help you with. At the bottom of that is going to be your cash to close. So that's the total that you need to bring to closing. Keep in mind that your earnest money that you paid at the beginning of the process is deducted, and so your closing costs are lowered by whatever your earnest money is. So you already paid some. That goes towards your eventual closing costs and down payment of total. This cash to close amount, you can either wire the total to the title company, or you can bring a cashier's check to closing with you. If you want to bring a check, you cannot bring a personal check. It has to be a cashier's check from your bank, and it needs to be drawn on the bank that your lender used to qualify you for the loan. So if let's say you have an account at Bank of America, and that's the bank that you've given all your statements to your lender, and that's the bank that they've been working through. Don't go out and I've got a second bank account at Wells Fargo, and that that will really mess everything up. You got to use the same account that the lender's been kind of working out of the whole time. So if you're going to do a cashier's check, make sure it's out of an account the lender has already vetted and looked through the statements. I always bring a personal checkbook to closing with me as well, just in case there's any places where the title company was off by a few $100s or something like that. They will accept a personal check for little small amounts like that. And so that can save you some time and effort if you do that. If you're going to wire money, always call the title company from a phone number that you find like online that you know is definitely the title company. Call and check the wire instructions before submitting the wire, because there is a lot of wire fraud in real estate transactions. So don't just rely on an email. Call the title company. Don't call from a number on an email. Call from, Google the title company and call that number, just to make sure, just be on the safe side. And then one last important thing is to just understand your bank. If you're going to have to wire money, whether it's the earnest money at the beginning or the closing costs at the end, at some point, if you're going to wire money, you need to make sure that you understand how your bank's wire process works. You're going to want to make sure that your bank allows wire transfers. I actually had a client one time, and it got to closing day. She'd been the best client ever. Everything was perfect. She had all of her ducks in a row, and it got to closing day, and she had her money in an online bank account, and they didn't allow wire transfers. And she did not find that out until the morning of closing when she's trying to wire. So, you just want to check, make sure your bank will do a wire transfer, make sure you understand the process, how much lead time they need, all of that. You also want to make sure you understand how quickly you can transfer money between your savings and checking account. I know that a lot of people keep their savings maybe in an online bank because they have a higher interest rate. You need to know, how many days does it take to get to my checking account if I need to write a cashier's check? How many days does it take? All of that. Can I wire things? Just make sure you understand all of that process before it's time to do it. Because like I said, some of those things, if they get delayed, can really, really mess up everything. And then one last thing, when you start the process. So before all of this, when you first call the agent, something I always tell new clients is, please go order a book of checks, personal checks. Just order them. It just makes life easier during this process. If you can go to the title company and drop off a check. If you don't want to order a whole book of checks, most banks, if you go in person, will give you a sheet of 3 checks. They'll print them out for you. And so you can get that sheet, and those work just as well. But just have that ready to go before you find the house that you want, so that you're not also trying to figure out how to get checks while you're trying to figure out how to get the earnest money to title. So just be prepared. Again, if you're prepared and you know it's coming and you have all your ducks in a row, it just makes this process, which is a complicated and difficult process, it just makes it a lot easier and a lot more peaceful and a lot less stressful. So be ready. I hope that this was helpful. If you're a new buyer, let me know below. If you have any other questions about the process, or if you think I forgot something, definitely let me know down below. If you like this video, then please remember to leave a like and subscribe. This is my channel where we talk about all things real estate related, specifically in San Antonio. So I do a market update every 2 weeks, and then we talk about home maintenance, the real estate process, all kinds of things, trends, design trends, you name it, we talk about it here. So if that is your cup of tea, then make sure you subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and I'll see you next time.